Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Hal and we met a couple years ago doing a film called Good Day for It. I received the script, and Hal was attached to it, and it was my chance to work with Mr. Holbrook, and I jumped on it. And it was a really wonderful script, and it was a great experience working with you. And I'm just so thrilled to be here with you tonight. You've been
I'm a
big hero.
lucky guy to have you agree to do this, because when we try to figure who would be fun to talk with on this thing, we thought of you right away. I say we because Joyce was helping me out, because we had a good talk up in Sonoma over the film festival. And thank you for doing this, Robert. This is one of the busiest actors you have ever met in your whole life. You've done about 12 films this year already, I think.
Well, slight exaggeration, but it's been a good year. But I'm thrilled to be here, and Joyce, I want to thank you for thinking of me. And for those of you that have gotten your book, you're in for a great time reading it. It's one of the best written books I've ever read. Autobiography, it's just fantastic. You're an amazing writer.
Thank you.
There were paragraphs in this book that I reread over and over. It's so eloquent and just such a wonderful read. And having known you and worked with you, to get a little insight into who you are and where you come from, your story is just amazing. And I don't know where we should start, maybe, but where would you like to start?
I picked the picture out that is on the cover of this book because my dear wife, Dixie, had it on a table in the living room for many years. She's still there. And under a lamp that I turn off at night. And I used to look at this little boy's picture, about 10 years old, as I turned the lamp, and I thought to myself, why is that boy smiling? Why is he smiling? Because I knew what he had gone through. I knew he didn't have any parents, really, because his mother and father just disappeared into the wild blue yonder when he was 2 years old, and his two sisters. And he was raised in boarding schools. He didn't really have a family. And he was getting beat up by this weird headmaster in this New England boarding school who loved to beat you and never tell you why he beat you with a stick. And I think, why is that boy smiling? That boy is me. His name is Harold, which I never liked. And then I went and I got one day after a year or two, I got a legal tablet out, and I started to write a book. When I was 7 years old, they sent me away to make a man of me. My name is Harold. And the editor changed that. And I was so in love with that beginning, I was really resistant when the editor changed. Thomas Labine at Farrar Straus, wonderful, wonderful. I learned a lot from him. And he reversed that opening couple pages with what goes right after it, which is about my mother. I thought I saw a ghost of my mother. And he starts with my mother, and I said, why do you do that? He said, because we want to know something about this little boy before he gets beaten. Then we know something about him, and you know, he was right.
Well, that's what's interesting. If he chose the first line of the book, I mean, you say, I'm trying to remember being held by my mother.
Yeah.
And that's how we start on your journey, this little boy. And that's a tough line to read, you know? I mean, you really never got to know your mom.
No, I didn't. That chapter ends with really, I think, I'm writing the second book now. I'm 500 and some pages. I'm up to 1986, and I got,
we'll be back next
25 years to go if I keep living. I don't know. This book will never end. But anyway, the first chapter of this ends with something that really has become a theme of both books. And you don't know up front what the theme of your life is going to be, you know, because it's like writing, it's really a wild experience. I mean, you're trying to evaluate who you are, be fair to everybody, not make yourself look great. I mean, tell things about yourself that you're not proud of. Really, I made so many horrible mistakes about it. Not protect yourself, and then find out what it is. What is the silver cord going through your whole life to now? And that first chapter really sets it up, because after this little boy goes into the headmaster's office and the other boys are lined up in the hall, and the headmaster never told you why you got beat, and you walk in there and he says, "You know what to do, Harold. Take your pants down." You take your pants down, both of them. Lean over on an armchair and take a hold of the arms, and while he's going into a closet and getting a 1x3 packing crate, slat, and he comes over and beats you. And you don't want to cry because the boys are outside lined up out for their, you don't want to cry. I mean, you know, a big man, right? And, you know, about the 8th or 9th time he hits you, you give away, you start to cry. And that's all he wants. He wants to hear you cry. A little strange guy, very strange. And then they put your pants up and you walk out. And one day, after I got beaten, I walked out, and I'm trying not to show my tears, trying not to cry. And I look past the line of boys, and I see this young woman who is my piano teacher standing outside the door of the room. And I thought, oh my God, I have a piano lesson. I forgot about it. I don't want her to know that I got hurt. But when I went close to her, she was a young woman, a lovely person. I could see in her eyes that she had listened to this beating. And I walked in, she closed the door, I walked over to the piano bench and sat down. I was trying to hold myself together, and she took a chair and pulled it up close to me. She didn't touch me. And then I put my hands on the keys, and I was trying to learn how to play America, two-handed. Put my hands on the keys, and then I tried not to cry, and all of a sudden I just started to cry. And she put her arms around me. I never forgot it.
You were 7 when that happened. I could have been 9 by then. I don't know. I was at that school for 4 years. I couldn't get out. I ran away 3 times. But when it got dark, I got scared and I went to the edge of the road where they could see me. Yeah. Well, you were 7 when they sent you to the boarding school.
Yeah, I was 7. Yeah.
And you were born in Cleveland, Ohio. Is that correct?
Well,
Were
I
you
was born in Cleveland, but my mother and father took off.
And
so my grandfather
father sent you.
Yeah, my grandfather was 60 years old. He took 3 little children, 1, 2, and 3 years old, back to our family town of South Weymouth, Massachusetts, where our people come in on one of those early boats. He built a house for his mother. He was very he was born with nothing. Nothing, you know, big family, nothing. His mother took in laundry, and he became very successful. So he took these, at the age of 60, he took these 3 children and raised us till he died at 12 years old. He was our champ. He's our champion.
Yeah, you write about him lovingly in the book, and you've mentioned, you know, the headmaster who was the one that spanked you there, and the piano teacher. And the way you write it in the book, you remember her, you say, it was an act of kindness I have remembered all my life.
Yes.
That she gave you, she
and
gave you comfort.
That is becoming a theme throughout my whole life.
Yeah, there were a lot of people along the way that helped you.
Because every once in a while, somebody does something that is very touching, an acknowledgement of some kind, and you don't accept it. I mean, you don't forget it. And it gives you the courage or whatever to keep going, to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and always to keep looking for, without thinking about it, you're really looking for that act of kindness that will never go away, you know? And if you get lucky, someday you find somebody, and that's it.
It's really very profound when you read about it. That whole incident happened after football practice, and you'd gotten some cleats in the face, I believe, and you decided to run a mile. You decided, you were 12 years old, you decided to run a mile.
Yeah.
You were hoping they were all looking, and because he's running the mile, trying to get, you were out there, you get a cleat in the face and you go run, and now you're late, and this is when the headmaster decides to beat you, and it's something that stays with you for the rest of your life.
Well, the thing I'm discovering about writing about my life is that I never knew that it's a good thing and it's a tough thing. I never knew how to quit. I never knew how to stop trying. I always took, if somebody presented me with a challenge, idiotic though it might be, I did it. Crazy, but I did it. And I just never stopped taking things on. And the more I read about it, the more I realized, you were saying, with the second book, you're saying, but I can't believe what you did. You go there. I can't even, I just was writing the other day about, I can't believe that human body could endure what I put myself through.
Yeah,
even as an older man.
You're a machine. When you read what he does, and we'll get to it, but
you just, I couldn't, but you know, also, it has a dark side because you are so concentrated on your own journey in life, if you can call it that by that pretentious word, but your own self, that you put other people aside. When the moment comes of decision, you only know how to survive and go forward on your own. And you put other people aside. It can hurt your children. It can break up marriages because you never learned to stop. You just never learned to stop. And in my case, I got very lucky late in life, 20, 30 years ago when I met Dixie Carter. And that's in the second book, but that changed my whole life. And it wasn't easy. I'm writing about the first several years now. It wasn't easy. I mean, she was so nice and kind and all that, but after we got married, I realized, she was no pushover. She was tough, boy. She was not going to stand there and be run over. So suddenly, I'm confronted with this woman that is tremendously attractive to me, and now she's a problem, for Christ's sake. Now I'm not so beautiful and great. I'm not always terrific. And what the hell happened here? Something's gone wrong. And she put both feet down. They were down. You weren't going to move them. And we were totally different. She was from the South. She was from a Republican family. And, I was this strange liberal Northerner. And the whole business, all right, about going into the Southern family. But I realized that I was like, my theme in life was, this is survival. We're into survival, man. Get serious. And her theme was, come on, y'all. Let's have fun. And, you know, it's like a totally different person. But there was a song once that was going through my head when she was mad at me. And it's that song, Sometimes When We Touch. Remember that old song?
Yeah.
Beautiful song, Sometimes When. It kept going through my head. And I thought, I have to give in. I love this woman. I can't stand for her to be unhappy. I have to give in. So I'm getting way ahead of myself, but basically it's this little boy who had to learn to survive on his own, who someday got lucky and learns you have to give in.
Your grandfather on Flag Day, that was a big deal in the book, where your grandfather, you on Flag Day, raising the American flag.
Yeah, it was a big thing for me.
Reciting the Pledge of Allegiance with
Pledge
your
of
sisters.
Allegiance, yeah.
And your grandfather really instilled in you all the hope that we have here in America, that, you know, you can go and make something of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. That was the
Which serves you later.
That was the that's what
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
He, when he was young, he quit school at 10 years old, 9 years old. His mother, they had about 7 people in the family. His father, I think, was in that terrible prison in the South at Civil War. Andersonville, and he ended up when he came north in the insane asylum. And Grandpa made like $1.50 a week when he first started out, and he took the cars into Boston and worked at cleaning spittoons at the United Shoe Machinery Company. That's how he started. And he was helping support his family on $1.50 a week. His mother was taken in washing. That was the ethic I came out of. But it was a very cold ethic. It was a very cold kind of upbringing. It was so different from what I found out later about Southern people. It was really mean, you know. I mean, people in my family that I came from, I don't think they really cared about other people very much, including people in their own family. They pretended to, but I don't think they did. And my grandfather, one of my earliest memories there is my grandfather put my father in the insane asylum when he was probably 26 or 27 years old. I have a picture of him I ran across a few months ago. This beautiful young man. He looked exactly like Henry Fonda. Tall, dark hair, dark eyebrows, dressed in white tux and a white jacket. It was kind of loose. It was in the 20s. You could see that he was kind of a swinger. And he didn't want to be a shoe man. My grandfather owned shoe stores. And
Stetson shoes,
he
right?
tried to make him a shoe man.
Yeah.
So he sent him, finally in despair, he sent him to Pittsburgh to a store there. To the guy running it was his friend Manning Smith, and they put him down in the stock room to try to get him interested in shoes and the stock. And finally, Manning Smith went down to check on him, and he was sitting on a stool over a bucket of water, floating a Stetson shoe around in the water to see if it would float. So they got rid of him. But in those days, they thought he was crazy. See, they thought somebody like that. If you were, it's taught me a great deal. Mark Twain was so wonderful revelation when I started reading about Twain and everything, because you begin to understand human nature and people and yourself reading Mark Twain. You just start to understand how people, have a mind that's going in one direction. It's got cement walls on both of it, and they're nice people, but they're not really part of the world.
In 1937, your grandfather, he became ill.
Yeah.
And you and your sister June and
Alberta.
But you and your sister June were sent away.
Yeah.
Your grandfather, you went to live with your grandmother.
Yeah.
And your grandfather was adamant about the fact that, as a matter of fact, the last time you saw him, he said to you, you have to make me promise you're going to go to the Culver Military Academy.
Yeah. Ma'am, we waited outside the door. We were being sent away to Cleveland, and nobody said it, but we could hear our grandfather in there because he was fighting like a tiger against whatever it was that killed him. I don't know. You could hear him howling sometimes. And we waited outside the door, and finally we were let in one by one. And I walked into my grandfather, and he was laying in bed, and he wasn't smiling. And he said, "Come here, buddy." He used to call me Buddy. He was a big, tall man. He looked like General Pershing, Blackjack Pershing, head of the armed forces in World War I. And he was tough. You got up early in the morning. You were at breakfast at 6:30. Your hair was combed. You spoke when spoken to. I walked over, and he said, "Come here, buddy," and took hold of my hand. And his hand was bony and smooth and strong. He took my hand, and he made me promise to go to Culver Military Academy. I was 12 years old. He said, "I want you to promise that you'll go to Culver Military Academy," whatever the heck that was. And what are you going to say? I said, yes, will you promise? I said, "Yes, Grandpa." He said, "You're a good boy," and that's it. And I hated all that regimen, especially after 4 years at that other school with that crazy headmaster. But I realized many years later, my grandfather knew that would save my life. Mm-hmm. Robert. He knew it would save my life because it would get me into an environment that was good, and I'd work hard and learn something.
Right. It sort of seemed like, after your relationship with your grandmother too, because her favorite thing was to, go out, and she called you her.
Well, he was getting me away from my grandmother. She called me my blue-eyed baby boy. Oh, she drove a 1938 green Buick coupe. Her top speed was maybe 28 miles an hour. Whenever she approached an intersection around town, everybody stopped and waited for her because nobody wanted to challenge Minnie Holbrook. And so she drove me all the way to Culver Military Academy in Indiana. It took 2 days to cover like 150 miles. We finally got there. She drives on the campus, and she sees this young cadet walking, and she drives up near him, and he jumps to the side quickly. He doesn't know what he's going to get hit or not. And she said, "Young man, where is South Barracks?" And he said, "Right there, madam." And then she says, "This is my blue-eyed baby boy, Harold."
Oh, boy. Oh, man.
Grandma, please.
That's classic.
She ruined me.
The theme that we talked about earlier, these moments of kindness, you had a second one that you remember distinctly, which was at you were in class at St. Augustine, and Sister Ernestine had decided to, have the class say a prayer for your grandfather.
Yeah.
Because she had found out that your grandfather had passed away, and
I never forgot it.
you really it touched you. It was another act of kindness that you.
Alberta was kept in South Weymouth when Grandpa died, but Alberta, my older sister June and I, we're only a year apart. We were sent to live with some strange people that were just persuaded to take us in.
Is that the Spaldings?
Huh?
Is that the Spaldings?
No.
No? Okay.
These I can't even remember. I don't even remember their name. It was the friend of the lady that worked for my grandmother as a housekeeper.
Oh yeah.
And the father was he resented us, I can't blame him, but he resented us. And he would be very cruel to my sister June. My sister June, nobody told her what to do. Somebody asked she's the same way today. Somebody told her what to do, she would just stand there with her mouth in a straight line and not do it unless she wanted to. So she was tough, and he took her on. And so once he found some chocolate syrup jar empty under her bed, because she'd raided the pantry, and he accused her, and he said, he was terrible. I mean, he said, he would send you to jail and all this kind of thing. And so he was really mean. So one day, we're sitting, my grandpa's down there in South Weymouth, dying, and we walk into the living room, and the man is reading the evening paper, the Cleveland Press. And he said, "Oh, by the way, you'll probably be interested in this." And he read our grandfather's obituary to us.
Wow.
That's how we found out Grandpa died.
Wow.
My sister June started screaming and ran out of the house. The guy yelled at her to come back, and I started following her and tried to stop me. I turned on him like a madman, and he backed off, went off and found my sister. And the next day, when I went to school at this Catholic school, we were there for 1 year between schools, And there was this Sister Ernestine, who was our homeroom teacher. She was such a dear woman. She was lovely. And that morning, she said, we always started with a prayer. It's a Catholic thing. And she said, this morning we're going to say a prayer for Harold's grandfather, who is in heaven.
It's dawning on you, you're even wondering how could I have lived through the deprivation of having no mother or father, never knowing why they left. Now you go off to Culver Military School.
Yeah.
You've had these acts of kindness, and you're soldiering on, just like you said. And at Culver Military Academy, you decide you want to become a distance runner.
Yeah.
And you say, in the book, it saved your life, becoming a distance runner.
Yeah, well, I love running. Ever since I got hit in the face with the cleat in the football.
That's right.
The coach took me out, and so I was so humiliated, I went to the running track all by myself and tried to run a mile for the first time. I was about 8, 9 years old. So anyway, I took up distance running, and then my senior year, 4th year at Culver, I had met, there was a guy in our Company C, Perry Warren Fisk. He was a little bit off the ground, but I liked Perry.
What does that mean?
He spoke sort of like John Barrymore. He could speak like John Barrymore, And he was in the dramatics class.
Yes.
And I had got to the point where I flunked algebra, and I needed 1 more hour of credit to fill out my curriculum for the senior year. And it could not be serious. I mean, forget astronomy, And I had used up chapel credit, and I was desperate. Because I had to take algebra over again, as well as whatever the next thing is, plane, different geometry, whatever.
Geometry.
I was in trouble. And so Perry was a friend, and I was talking to Perry, and he said, "Why don't you take dramatics?"
That changed your life.
Huh?
Changed your life.
Changed my life. And I looked, I didn't want to insult him, but I didn't want to get mixed up with those people. I thought they were very strange. But they were not good cadets, and the other guys didn't think too much of them. So, but then I said, no, Perry, I couldn't get on the stage. I'd be frightened. And he said, well, Colonel, Major Mather, here, they'll only give you a line, or you won't have to. I said, no, Perry. I said, thanks a lot. And then he said, there's no homework. wait a minute, 1 hour of credit, no homework? So I joined up with them, and
The survival mechanism is working
yeah,
for you.
survival mechanism
Yeah,
is working.
exactly.
And I liked them. After a while, took a while, I liked these people.
Right before that, you had been to the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, and they played for you at Culver, actually.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And you say that the guy with the little stick and his hundreds of musicians offered you one more act of kindness right there. It made you want to be a part of that, and that I think that's your.
It touched something in me.
In you.
I had never, we made fun, the Indianapolis Symphony is going to come and play. Culver is a great school. It is the greatest school in America right now. It is a great school. No longer military, really, but they have girls there now. It's a hell of a lot better than when I was there, I'll tell you that. But they're healthy and they have it's a great school. But we're making fun, and when you went to assembly, it was in the small gym. You had to sit up straight, and if you leaned back, the first classman would be behind you, would kick you in the spine with his toe of his boot. So we were waiting there, and there was 100 people, and they're all dressed like going to a funeral in black, like you now here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this little man comes out with a stick. And he raises the stick, and everybody gets quiet, and somebody behind me gets kicked in the spine because he's trying to make a noise. And we silence. And then suddenly, music starts. Beautiful. Brahms, sweeping music. I never heard anything like it in my life before. And it just got a hold of me and just picked me up and flew me around. And it was an extraordinary experience because it opened up something I didn't know was there. And I started writing poetry. Went back, started writing poetry. Drove my roommate, George Livingston, crazy.
I was going to mention George.
Yeah.
George also had a real profound effect on you.
Yeah.
Events that happened with him.
Yeah, well, you mean at school.
Yeah.
And then another thing, these incidents really mark your life. They mark stations of your life because George, we got out of Culver, and George Livingston lived in Youngstown, and we went to Denison University. He went too. And I didn't want to get involved in fraternities. I hadn't been in boys' school for so long. I don't want to join up with any more boys. I just want to be alone, just be alone. And George really wanted to be in a fraternity. And he wasn't a tough guy at all. He was kind of, he wasn't an athlete or anything. And he picks out Beta something, the football fraternity is what he wants to be part of. And they liked him. They wanted him. And I was really worried for him because I was afraid they wouldn't take him. But he said, they like me, Hal. They really want me. I said, well, what's the matter? You're looking funny. He said, well, they have a law against Jews. I'm Jewish. So they're going to go to the national headquarters of this fraternity and see if they can get a special dispensation for me. They want me so much. And I thought, oh, God, George, I'm really scared for you. And so next day I came back and I went in his room and he was sitting there alone. I said, what's the matter? He said, they wouldn't take me. And I never saw George cry. We were roommates for several years. And he started crying. I never forgot it. And at the first semester, he quit college, joined the army, went to France, and fought the Nazis.
You mentioned in the book hearing FDR on the radio announcing Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that was a moment. It was my senior year, 4 years at Culver. At Culver was a high school level, but one of the few schools of that kind in the country that had such a serious ROTC program that it was like college. You would just have to graduate, you'd go to Fort Benning, Georgia for 6 weeks, and you became a second lieutenant. That was it. And so we came back from chapel one Sunday and in December, and the guys across the hall from us was a cadet captain and his roommate. And you know, you hear something in the background, and what the hell is that? It sounds serious. And so we heard this voice. And so I got up and I walked across the hall to his room. Schofield was his name. And I heard this man saying, "A day that will live in infamy." And it was the president, and he was talking about our country being attacked at Pearl Harbor. And these 4 guys, we stood there, and we realized our life was not going to be what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It was changed forever at that moment. We used to visit our father in the insane asylum on Carnegie Avenue in Cleveland. And we would bring him a carton of cigarettes with a grandmother, and we would stand there for 5 minutes, and she used to pretend that he was in college at a fine school somewhere like, Culver Military Academy or something. That's the way she treated it. And it was kind of embarrassing. You just didn't know what to say. I mean, these guys standing around like this. My father didn't look crazy to me. He never was. He should never have been put in there. We didn't know nothing as a kid. We were just told he was safe in the insane asylum. So we'd get out. They would have to unlock big prison gates, bars, 2 of them to get into him and get out. And the editor of my book told me when I read the book, before we started working on it, there are 2 themes in here that besides survival. Hal, I said, well, what is that? He said, well, one is your mother. Oh, come on. I never bothered about my mother. She said, yes, you did. Where do you think you got your talent? Where do you think you got the crazy impish thing that made you go climb a mountain alone and stuff? You think they got that from those sober people in New England? It was your mother. I said, oh my gosh. And the other was a fear of insanity. Because in those days, long ago when I was young, in New England too, there was really a serious belief that insanity could be hereditary. And so if you drag a couple of kids in to see their dad in the insane asylum and several times, it could make you worry, about maybe you could be crazy. So he got out of there, and he disappeared out here somewhere, because my mother disappeared here in this town somewhere we don't know. And so I come out for Christmas, and my grandmother would stay at the Normandy Hotel on Normandy, a block away from the old Ambassador, which they tore down. The greatest hotel in America. It was magnificent, like a palace with something. And she would go there in the afternoon and order some tea and a cookie and have her friends come, and they would think she was staying at the Ambassador Hotel. So finally, we go in there to meet my father. My father's a big, tall guy. This guy walks in with a cowboy hat with a bullet hole in it, cowboy shoes, skinny as a rail. His hair has turned totally white, and he's only about 45 years old, and he has no teeth. And this is my dad. Hi, boy, how you doing? Hi, Ma, how you doing? I'm building a house out in Calabasas. Yeah, all redwood. redwood, doesn't rot. Nothing will rot it. Yeah, even the toilet. Yeah, I got to get a toilet. How'd you fix your cash, Ma? And I think, this is my father? This weird-looking guy is my father? So he says, well, come out and see the place he's building. It's way out in like Tarzana, well, this is 1941. So we get in the car and we follow him. He's in a little Willie thing, or what do you call it? But this tiny, smallest little car. It was like a midget car. And he gets in, he has a corkscrew himself in it. And his knees are up as high as the top of the dashboard. And he's got a cowboy hat with a hole in it. And so I said, I'm going to ride with my grandma. So we follow him on Ventura Boulevard. Well, the idea of boulevard becomes really weird after a while because now you're in the wilderness. There's nothing there, no houses, nothing. Just brown hills with these oak trees, dying for a drink of water. So we're going out there, and suddenly off the side of the road is this half-built cabin. So we're there, and finally he says, why don't you stay with me tonight out here? I said, I don't think, Grandma said, I don't think Buddy should stay here. Harold, his name was Harold too. Well, why not? He can sleep, I'll sleep on the floor. He can sleep on the cot here, and spend the night with me. And so I had to spend the night with him. She disappeared. Now I'm with this strange creature in the middle of the wilderness. One wall of the cabin was not closed in yet. It only had studs. I'm in the wilderness, and he's sleeping on the floor, and I'm on the canvas cot laying there thinking, I'm listening to howling wolves. And the studs are wide open on the side of the place, and I'm thinking, oh my God Almighty, if a wolf comes in here and gets us in the middle. And I'd say, Daddy, are those wolves? Yeah, don't worry, kid. It won't hurt you. You don't like the smell. So don't like the smell, kid. So he goes to sleep. And I'm laying, I can't wait for the sun to come up. I laid there the whole damn night. So finally, he gets me in the Willies to drive me back to Grandma at the Ambassador. Well, I mean, he's like this. You're driving like this. And we're going down Ventura Boulevard, and all of a sudden, he doesn't talk or nothing. He's not a talker. All of a sudden, he goes, wow, get out, boy, get out, open the door, get out. He takes his hat, What the hell's going on? He picks up this black thing from the seat. He said, you don't want to fool with them, boy. I said, what is it? Black widow spider. And he throws it out, and I say, okay. So I get back in. All I'm thinking of the rest of the night is black widow spiders. That was my one night with my father.
On the way back, you all stop in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm going to go look for Mormons.
Yeah.
And you start walking around.
I wanted to see what Mormons look like.
He said, I'm going to go look for Mormons. So, and then you find the Mormon Tabernacle.
Yeah.
And you're inspired. You see it, and you realize, this was built by people with a belief in dreams.
Yeah.
And it was really very profound. You say, I was inspired. I wanted with all my heart to be a part of a miracle.
Yeah.
And when you get back to Culver, you do your second play.
Yeah.
This one you have a little bit more substantial part. Yeah. Room service.
Yeah.
And you literally say, I'm beginning to feel like an actor because I'm working with some real actors.
Yeah.
So the profession is starting to take hold.
Yeah.
You're going to run with it. And you're leading up to a decision you've got to make because you've been maintaining the long distance running.
Yeah.
And you had a coach that really believed in you because you were really good.
Yeah, he did. When I was a plebe, he coached the cross-country team, the boxing team in the winter, which I was fool enough to join after a while, and the track team. Mike Carpenter. He was a tough Southerner from Alabama, really tough, but he took a liking to me as a kid. Took me on the trips, even though I came a lap behind. And he's not the kind of guy you feel like he cares about you, but he must have. I mean, he really watched me. He'd watch me, he'd never say nothing. But over the 4 years, I became to where finally I won the last cross-country race. I beat Teasdale. I always thought Teasdale let me beat him. But in the 100 yards, where you ended the 2-mile run across through the trees and everything, you ended it on the football field in front of everybody. And I was trying to make Teasdale hurry up because the guy from Niles, Michigan was right behind us. And I suddenly realized halfway across the football field, I can win this race. And I did. And I won.
And so that was a hard decision for you, though, and to decide whether or not to continue on with the acting, to rehearse for this play.
Yeah.
And you really labored over it. You made a choice. You describe it as, did I want to join the weirdos to be an actor?
Yeah.
Or was I going to run this race? And you decide to join the actors.
Yeah.
And you start finding that you like makeup.
Yeah, I love makeup.
You like the whole acting experience now. You're starting to lose yourself in the grease paint and makeup, and so you make yourself up as Quasimodo as an experiment, and you scare the hell out of your grandmother. Is that right?
Lived with Grandma in Cleveland, and I got the little Max Factor kit and took it home for the summer, and and I decided one night I'm going to make up as Quasimodo and go around in the neighborhood and scare people. So I cut a ping pong ball in half and tape it over my one eye, and I put makeup on it, and I got little pieces of hair, and I heard about collodium, and I got collodium, which freezes your, and I had pieces of hair sticking out of the back of my hand and everything because I got into glue, spirit glass. And so I crept down the back stairs and I went out. I had a hump on my back and I had a limp, like this. And I got one of Grandma's scarves and wrapped it around my head. And I went to the neighbors, and the dog would come to the door, and the side lights, see the dog, me jumping, and I had to get out of there before the people came. Finally, one lady opened the door, took a look, said, "Young man, go home." It was very, very disappointing to me. So finally, I thought, well, maybe Grandma. So I went back to our house to the front door, which nobody ever used, a big mansion, 20 rooms. And I knocked on the door, and she opened it. And she said, "Oh! Ah!" And she tried to close it, and I grabbed the door and started coming in. I said, "It's just me, Grandma. Get away! Oh, you dirty thing! Oh, get away! Oh, you filthy thing! Go away! Harold, come quick!" And she was screaming at the top of her voice. And I'm trying to say, "It's okay, it's me, Grandma. Get away! Oh, police!" And she ran in, got into the kitchen, and scared out of her wits. And she's calling for me as if I'm upstairs. And finally, I took the ping pong ball off my eye, and and I made the mistake of raising my hand up, and it had hair coming out of the back of it. It didn't help at all. So finally, she knew who I was.
You were abused. You were abandoned as a child. You find acting now. You're looking and depending, for finding kindness through acts from other people, and you're deeply aware of others. You're very sensitive to what happened with George, and you're starting to take refuge in playing other people, and there's comfort in there for you for being other people and hiding behind that makeup. And while this is going on, you meet Ed Wright, who was to have an incredibly big impact on you.
Yeah.
And Ace Morgan.
Yeah, Ace Morgan.
And you describe Ace as the guy, he taught you what it was meant to look for he lit a flame in you to look for truth in theater.
Yeah.
and for tracking down what is true.
Yeah.
And
Ace was a remarkable, talented guy, and he went to Denison University, where I did. Went 1 year before the war, and at that time, if you were 17, you weren't 18 yet while you were in the college year. They let you finish the college year, and then you went straight into the Army. So we both went into the Army on May 27th. He was a tremendously talented guy. He directed one of the major shows in the first year. He was a brilliant director. And he introduced me to things like Shostakovich, you know, whoever he was. This, you know, orchestra guy from Russia, you know, God, come on. So we're sitting on the floor and he's playing Shostakovich. And I think, Shostakovich? But you know, it was really kind of wonderful. And he was using it as background music in this play he wrote, which is an anti-Nazi play, Letters to Lucerne. Went into the war, and while I was stationed in Newfoundland, I got a letter from Ed, because Ed wrote a letter, my teacher, for 3 years. Every week, he wrote a letter to all three of us, Ace, Morgan, Gordon Condit, and me. And every third week, you got the original. And he wrote us every week telling us what was going on. And one day I opened his letter, and Ace had been killed in France trying to rescue a buddy. He got cut down with machine gun fire. Because the other guys went back, but he didn't go back. He kept going. He didn't go back because he didn't know how to retreat. He should never have been in a war. The war was not for him because he couldn't retreat. And it made a big impression in my life.
you mentioned Gordon, and Gordon wrote The World Within, and you describe in the book as you had trouble with the role because you were playing a straight character with no disguise, no makeup, and it terrified you because you were too close to yourself, and you describe it as it's still something you were shook by it, your confidence for years.
I didn't know how to
Who
act
is Hal
by
Holbrook?
myself.
Yeah, you were like used to hiding behind.
If I didn't have an accent or a wig or makeup, just me, I was totally insecure. That lasted for a long time.
You enter the Army, you mentioned in 1943. You were given an opportunity to go to West Point.
Yep.
And you decided to...
I didn't know what to do.
My
uncle, who was kind of like he was pretending to be my father, but he wasn't, but he was nobody around. By then, everybody was gone, and so he thought it was a great opportunity, and it was. And Ed Wright, my teacher, wrote me, and because I asked for advice, and he didn't give me the advice, but he said, you should just think this over before you say yes, because you have to spend 4 years at West Point and then 4 more years in the Army before you could get out. And by then you'd be 28 years old. Pretty late to start to be an actor. So
do you the acting had taken hold of you.
Yeah,
you
the
knew that's
acting
what
had
you
by
wanted
then,
to do.
You know, really, I'd really taken hold of me in a serious way. I mean, I'd done Quasimodo, you know. So I
Where do you go from
I
there?
had to decide what to do, and I couldn't. The guys I was at Camp Edwards out on the East Coast, and everybody in the company, like, hey, Hal, geez, in the platoon, come on, man, are you crazy? You're going to West Point? Get the hell out of here. Yeah, man. No, go on, do it. And I don't know. So it was the 4 guys from the Northeast Command were picked, and 2 of us would go to West Point. So it was 4 guys, and I was one of the 4. So we were taken out to a little island off of Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the Cape. And we had to go before a board of a general and 3 colonels or something like that in a wooden hut under the pine trees. I got there, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I couldn't decide what to do. It was a major moment in my life, actually. I didn't know what to do. And then it was my turn to go in. I went in, turned left, turned right, salute, Private Holbrook reporting, sir. And these four guys with all the brass on were looking down at the table, I guess, on my papers. And then finally, the man in the middle, must have been the general, looks up and said, well, Private Holbrook, I think the first thing we need to know is, if you're chosen to go to West Point, do you want to go? Then he looked back down, because, and there's this big pause. And then I decided. I said, no. And the heads popped up like, well, how the hell did he get in here? They said, well, I guess that'll be all, Private Holbrook. Yes, sir. And I did my reverse, thing and walked out of there. And then I started to be a human being with the guys. I stopped being a good soldier, and I started screwing around with my buddies.
You describe it as you creating a character to hide behind. You were still acting, and you wanted to fit in with the guys, and you wanted to be a part. You only wanted to show a part of yourself, and the rest of you protected. That's how you described the character you put forward in the army.
In order to survive in an atmosphere like that, which is all about macho man, macho man, macho man, and you're talking using horrible language that you would never use at home. I mean, really horrifying. I wouldn't even describe some of it. And it's all about, who was the big, guy in the thing, what were we getting into?
We're getting into, you had created a...
I had to create a whole character.
Facade, yeah.
Like I swore all the time, and everybody, F-U-C-K, they said about 6 times in every paragraph. And, talking about girls all the time, like you would never talk about anybody you knew and stuff like that. And that was it. And when I went home on a leave, they gave me a leave after, 16 weeks. I got off the train, and my uncle was meeting me. And I said hello and started talking to him. And I realized I had turned into a totally another human being all of a sudden from the one that was in the Army. And so I created a character for myself in the Army and lived that character for 3 years. You couldn't mention Keats and Shelley, This would not go. It was,
Even as tough as you were, though, you did something I thought was really very, very cool. You guys were in New York, and there was a hotel, and somebody had to go sleep with some black soldiers, and you were the one that volunteered to be the guy to go room with these guys. And I thought, that's pretty profound.
They constantly, instead of sending me overseas, they would send me to another school, first Harvard. They're going to make me an electrician or something. I flunked out of Harvard because I never went to class. I opened the grates, I took the grates off the window and walked in with a couple of guys to Boston and chase girls all night and come in and, I'd lay down and get up for reveille. I didn't even change my clothes. So, I flunked out of Harvard right away. They sent me to another school. And a lot.
Oh, here you are. They need someone to go sleep in this room with black soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking around wondering who's going to do it, and next thing you know, you're the one saying, I'll do it.
Well, I was embarrassed. We were at the Broadway Central Hotel. The Army took it over, probably 1,000 guys. And, none of us knew each other. We were from all different outfits around the country. And there were the black guys there. I never seen black guys in the Army, at that time. It wasn't integrated, but there were black guys. And not a lot, but some. And it was kind of weird. And so they were the sergeant was assigning rooms, and he read out names, and he got down, to the last names, and all the rooms on the lower floors where the white guys were going to be were taken. And I was the one left. And the black guys were on the top floor, and there was a room up there with another guy. He always roomed with somebody. It was free. And the sergeant, the poor sergeant he was really in a spot. He'd been handed a hot potato he didn't know he was going to have. And now, here was the United States Army and America looking at itself.
Yeah. And that comes into play later when you get Mark Twain going and you're touring
Nobody
around the
was saying
South.
a word.
Yeah.
And I looked around at the guys, and I looked at the black kids, and they were looking down. And I said, I'll go. And so I went up and I roomed with this guy.
Well, after that, you end up have a big fight. You brawl with about 6 Navy guys. You break your finger.
Yeah.
The only thing you want to tell the surgeon is to figure out a way to kind of close it.
That's the only
I'm going to be an
blow
actor.
I landed.
Yeah. You landed more blows than that. You were,
Huh?
the way you described it, you were like Chuck Norris in Silent Rage. For crying
Well,
out loud.
I may have thought I was Chuck Norris, but I didn't know how to fight. But I always got into fights, so I always got beat up a lot.
All right,
I
so-
like you. I needed you around, pal.
Well, yeah.
You would have shown me how to do it, man.
So you end up in Newfoundland.
Huh?
You end up in Newfoundland.
Yeah, Newfoundland.
And you see a thing in the paper and you go to audition for this play and there's a girl there
Yeah.
and you meet this girl
You know,
and you end up falling in love with this girl.
Yeah, I do. And there was a moment that changed my whole life again, because the bus went into town from Fort Popper. You know, the war was it was ending. I mean, Patton was going across, France real fast at the time. And we were sent up there to relieve the, troops had been there for years. We could go into town at night, St. John's. I mean, it was built in the 14th century, and it was still in the 14th century. There was nothing going on there. And we'd take the bus into town and walk around. And so the bus came back to Fort Pepperell, and I was all alone on the bus. And I had read in the Newfoundland paper that they were casting for a play called Lady Precious Stream, a Chinese play. And they wanted a young man. And I knew I could get out at night. And I'm looking there, and the driver said, "Are you getting off?" And I thought, oh, what shall I do? I thought of my teacher, Ed Wright, who was always so serious about acting, about the theater, not acting, the theater. And I said, I'm staying on. And I went back, and I got off, and I went to the address, and I got cast in the play. And I met a young woman who became my first wife, Ruby Holbrook. And we went on tour together and developed a show and everything.
And that's a real fascinating part of the book. They go on the road, and you guys come up with a two-man show, two-person show. You guys tour all over the United States of America.
Yeah.
The schedule you have, it's just unfathomable how you got through it. You're learning lines for plays. You're doing it summer stock. You're just totally taken over by acting, your wife, you're on the road, you're working. Somebody suggests to you, maybe you should do this Mark Twain interview with Mark Twain. You start doing that. Another act of kindness, somebody gives you a white suit. You had no idea how important that was going to be to you. You work, you're all over everywhere. I mean, you're so much a part of America, just the blood, sweat, and tears you poured out all over this country. I mean, on the road doing these shows, you continue to build it. There's stress that's involved with you and Ruby. At one point, she says she can't go on. You're panicked about that because this is your survival thing.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. You'll read it and you'll just be exhausted. I was like, Jesus, I haven't done anything compared to Mr. Holbrook. I've never met anybody that's worked so hard. And the culmination is, of course, people suggest things to you, and perhaps you should do Mark Twain as a one-man show. You're struggling in Hollywood. You meet you go to Lee Strasberg. You're seeing all the studio actors. You're doing a soap opera in New York. You're trying to support you. It's just unbelievable. You just read the stress and everything that's going on and the doubt, and it's amazing. And you'll have to read the book to see where it all goes, but I think you all know. And I spent a lot of time on your early part of your life. It was just amazing to me because I agree with you. So it's the little acts of kindness, the people that say to you, how you're good, they give you that confidence to continue to carry on.
Yeah.
And there's one really great part of the book that I want to mention is the Mount Shasta thing. And I think I've spent so much time. Can I cover this real quick? During this whole struggle, and you're doing the soap opera, you're doing summer stock, you're working really, really hard. You go and you meet this casting director at CBS in New York, and this guy is so rude to you.
Yeah.
But this is a theme that comes up with Hal because he's got so much backbone and this survival part of him, this survivalist. He walks out of the office, he sees a sporting goods store, he's fuming, and he decides he's going to go on a ski trip. And the guy tells him the only place you can go skiing right now is Mount Shasta, and where?
In Rainier, on the glacier.
So now,
it's September.
So now we find Mr. Holbrook is, flying across country. He's got skis. He's got, you packed your Hemingway bag.
Yeah, damn near 70 pounds.
And he goes up and he's on a glacier. And describe a little bit about that for us.
Well, I got a friend of mine was working on the North Beach, Lovey Powell, singing in a club, the Purple Onion. Wonderful. Those days was great. The 1954, Mort Saul and people like that were just starting out. And anyway, somebody there had worked in the Forest Service up at Shasta. He told me what to do and what not to say, to look up the forest ranger, and the forest ranger put me in touch with the weatherman, and the weatherman drove me up to Sand Flats at 6,500 feet at Shasta. I had never been out overnight. I didn't really know how to start a fire. I didn't know anything. And I was going to be 4 days up there, and this guy drives me up there, and the road is getting just a couple of ruts. We come to this clearing, and he said, this is as far as I could go, and I get out. And he keeps saying, are you sure you're all right? I said, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I was afraid he'd say, you don't really want to do this, do you? Because I might say, you're right, I don't. I was sucked into it. And the trees were so high, you couldn't see the sky. I mean, they were enormous trees, redwoods or sequoias. And I got out of the car, and I said, I'll be all right. I'll see you Thursday. 4 days, right? 4 days, yeah. Noon, right? Yeah, noon. And that car turned around and started back down that little dirt track and disappeared. And I looked around, and I am all alone. I have put myself into the most frightening position that this insecure guy could ever put himself in. It was like insanity.
I love that about you, though, man. That takes some real balls. It's amazing that you did it.
It's craziness. It's not balls. It's craziness.
Well, you have this suicidal impulse that you talk about.
Yeah, that's right.
There are many things that I've skimmed over. Mark Twain, when you've worked really, really hard and you're finally going to get it up on Broadway. We need to talk about that if we can real quick. I just bought the DVD, and I remember seeing that on TV. I was old enough, I was like 10 or 11, to watch Mark Twain Tonight when it was broadcast. And you won the night on CBS. 30 million people tuned in to watch you do this performance. Yeah. The casting director at CBS, I hope he was watching. Because he didn't give, he was so rude to you.
On his network, yeah.
And on his network, you won the night with Mark Twain, a character that you had created with the help of a lot of people along the way that you acknowledge. Yeah. And here's your big night. You're going out on Broadway, and you describe to him how you felt.
I describe it at the end of the book. I was so frightened. I was so frightened because I was in a little off-Broadway theater, and I was going to go. And the day before, I had an office on 44th Street, and I walked over, it was a block off the theater district. I walked on 44th Street, and I see a flower drum song and this musical, and then walked with Henry Fonda and what's her name in Two for the Seesaw, and I looked down, and I, you know, and Helen Hayes was doing, and Paul Newman and what's her name were just doing Sweet Bird of Youth, and I thought, I must be crazy. I must be really crazy to take my little Tunaville trolley show from Wahoo, Nebraska, and come here and do this. And I was frightened to death. And while I was making up his 3.5-hour makeup, can you believe it? The show was only 2 hours. 3.5-hour makeup to make up as Twain. And my hands were shaking, and I was telling myself, you know, I was using the brush to create wrinkles, and I started thinking about the people that had been mean to me, like that guy and the headmaster. I started cussing them, and I said, stop it, control yourself. You don't want the brush to, you know, miss. You're cutting a line under that low light. You got to be careful. And I went, we had a little tiny theater. It had a screw behind the curtain. It was about 1 foot of space. And I waited with my stage manager, Joe Keating, and the lights went down, and suddenly the lights went on, and he said, go. And I walked out, and I'd always felt safe when I was made up as an old man, when I was in disguise. When I was in disguise, I always felt safe. It's taken me 40 years as an actor to learn to act without fear, me, myself, maybe more. And I walked out, you know, thinking I was going to be okay, because whenever I got into the Mark Twain thing, no matter where I was in the country, you know, Wahoo, Nebraska, or Alexandria, Louisiana, I was in armor. And I walked out there, and all of a sudden, I thought to myself, are you out of your mind? You are in New York. There are New York critics out there, and you are taking up their time with your little Tunaville trolley show from nowhere. Are you crazy? And I started shaking all over. I dropped the matches on the floor. I was just had a horrible time. I describe it. And I thought I was dying. I thought I was finished. It was a 3-act show then.
Then the reviews came in, and they were
Yeah.
unbelievably
Yeah.
kind. They loved you.
And I couldn't believe it. I never believed it. I couldn't believe it for years.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I thought they made a mistake.
But they loved you, and we all love you. And you're an institution. You're a legend. You're so much a part of America and all the work you've done. And I'm sure some of you remember seeing the Mark Twain Tonight when it was first broadcast. If you haven't seen it recently, you should check it out again. You can buy it on Amazon, by the way. I hope you're getting some percentage on that, my
I'll give
friend.
you permission.
But it's an amazing book.
Thank you,
and,
Robert.
Unfortunately, I used up all your time.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.